Hello!
Woo!
Hi, everybody. Welcome 1.5 hours later than we normally do our broadcast to this week's episode of Social Justice from 6 Feet Apart. Woo! Dan, are you in a new location today? I'm in a new location today.
I am not in a new location. The strange thing about the space I've been in the last few weeks is like if I shift it, it looks new because like there's this leather couch here. I'll move
Yeah.
that Tom Brady poster that was back there the last few weeks because that wasn't mine personally, so I just put it on the ground.
Cool.
Yeah, so it looks maybe a little different, but same space. Same space.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm
Where
in my
are you?
kitchen today. Normally I record this from just an extra room where there's a desk in my apartment. And today I'm in the kitchen because normally we record these on Thursdays and my partner is working from home on Thursdays, but this week she went into work, so I get the kitchen.
Ooh.
Because it's a little brighter in here. It's a little nicer.
The lighting is good. I also like the
Thank you.
twinkle lights you have behind you.
Yeah.
You have a nice fan in the other room.
Yes, I do. Yeah. Cool. Well, I do have the ukulele.
Thank goodness.
We can get the episode started. Ready? All right.
We're never going to let that bit go in case
I
anyone's
know.
wondering.
We start ever recording these from the office, ukulele's going to have to move back and forth, or I'll just have to get a second one.
I was going to say, we get you an office ukulele.
And a home ukulele.
Exactly. Work-life balance.
Perfect. All right, so Dan, you have some hot topics for us this week?
I do. I have a few good ones. They're kind of all over the place, but like,
Great.
I feel like they should be, you know? Let's have some fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first one is pet-oriented, so I think that this is a great one. I saw a thread on Twitter asking if people ever call their pets by their real name. And I started scrolling through, and it was someone who's been asking like a different question every day or something like that. And the question was, do you ever call your pet like by their actual name? And as I was reading that, I was like, maybe like 50% of the time, like me and my family do. We have a dog named Lily, and we've had her for about like 10 or 11 years now. So like we call her Lillian, which is like her full name. And then like my brother calls her like Lily Kalani. I call her my golden girl because she has a beautiful golden fur coat. She's also getting a little older, so like, you know.
She's a golden girl. Yeah.
She's a golden girl. She is in the new reboot, actually. We'll talk about
perfect.
that later. Great. But yeah, so like half the time I feel like I don't even call my dog like just Lily.
Yeah.
So I know you have 2 cats, right?
Yeah. I have 2 cats. I have my cat Morris, who has made an appearance on this show in the past. I pretty much call him Morris. I don't feel like his name lends itself to a lot of nicknames, and that just is his name. Like if you get to meet this cat and his personality, there's really nothing else that one could call him. We do occasionally refer to him as a weasel because he's kind of like, it's sort of his body shape. He's kind of like long and slinky, and he's kind of annoying, and he's regularly like jumping on stuff he shouldn't be jumping on, or like getting into things he shouldn't be getting into. So it's mostly my girlfriend that calls him that, but occasionally we'll call him a weasel. And then our other cat is named Kringle because he was like a Christmas find, like found in a dumpster situation when he was a kitten. So his name is Kringle, and yeah, he's much older. My cat is like, Morris is only like, I think he's like 4 years old. He's pretty young, but Kringle is like 15. Like he's an old man. So I do refer to him as old man most of the time because he looks like an old man, and he is one. Yeah, that's so funny though, because I feel like I had lots of pets growing up. My parents, we always had like a lot of cats, and we had a dog, and I definitely called them all by nicknames and stuff. But now it's like my animals are so accurately named. I mostly go by their given name.
Yeah, because I remember when you said that you got Kringle around Christmas time, my parents, before they had kids, they had a dog that they got on the 4th of July that they named Liberty. And she was still kicking when I came into the picture, like 12 years later or like 10 years later. And I never like had a nickname for her, and I also had a turtle named Sheldon. Never had a nickname for him either. So I feel like we're opposites. When you were kids, you used to name things.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, I wasn't. Now that we're old, the roles have reversed. We're not old, by the way.
No, not really.
Older.
But we're older than we were.
That is true. That is how time works.
Aww.
So if you have any fun names for your pets, let us know. We would love to hear them.
Oh, yeah. Definitely, folks.
Any other pet anecdotes, Kelsey, before we move on to a new hot topic?
Well, we've been making these videos for student services every week. And one, was it this week? The topic was pets. It was like, introduce your pet. So I picked up Morris and like, I brought him into the video and I was talking about him. And the question was, Malcolm has been sending out these prompts of like, like things to talk about in your video. And the question was like, what does your pet like to do for fun? And I was really struggling because my cat, and seriously, working from home, like being home all the time, they just sleep all day long. Like they don't do a damn thing. They just sleep. They change, they sleep in one spot. They get up, maybe they change positions. They go back to sleep in the same spot. They move to a new spot in the living room. Like, that's really it. But Morris does love, particularly in the morning, like first thing in the morning, if you come downstairs and you come into the kitchen, he really loves sitting on the counter and looking out the window with his window like over the sink. There's like a little spot on the counter where he can sit next to the sink and just look out the window. And I don't know what he's looking at. There's not like tons of birds out there or something. It's just the sky. But he looks like he's solving complicated math equations or something in his head as he's like gazing out the window, but he is not that smart.
It's that woman with the math just like flying.
Yeah, seriously. That's what I imagine. But he's kind of a dummy. So I don't know what's going on up there. Not much.
Maybe just really hard math.
Probably. Ugh. Cool. Well, that's it. Yeah, that was a fun question to think about.
Thank you, Twitter.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Internet,
Twitter,
for giving us all this content to look through.
Yes.
Another one that I found was, I saw this last night and it's still going today, there's rumors of a potential live action Hercules coming from Disney soon.
Oh, okay.
And I'm sure this will stir a lot of emotions in certain people. I'm sure everyone loves Disney. But I wanted to get your take, Kelsey. What do you think of all these live action things that they're doing recently?
I've only seen, let's see, what did I see? I saw the new Beauty and the Beast that came out a few years ago. I saw the new Lion King, which, I guess that's live action. I mean, it was all still animated, but yeah.
As live action as that can get, I guess.
Right, yeah. I have not been, in some ways it's sort of fun. Like what I loved about the new Lion King was it was really fun for the Seth Rogen, Billy Eichner pairing of Timon and Pumbaa. Like that was really great. And it was like kind of a new, I mean, the characters were the same, but the way that they interpreted the characters and the way they said the lines was different than in the original cartoon movie. So sometimes it's like, oh, this is kind of fun. Like these new people get to play these parts. And then other times I'm like, Disney, this just feels a little bit lazy. Like, come up with a new movie, We don't, do I need a live action Hercules? Probably not. I mean, it is also I guess the other thing that you can do if you're remaking a movie, there's lots of problematic stuff in some of the old Disney movies, probably in most older Disney movies. There's like stuff that's sexist, stuff that's racist, stuff that just, now in 2020, hopefully we look at it and we go, you know what? You really shouldn't have been making that joke, or you really shouldn't have depicted that person that way. So if the goal is like, we want to update the movie so it's still fun and the characters that we all love, but we don't have the problematic stuff, that's great. I think that's cool. Yeah. But I didn't love Beauty and the Beast. I thought it was okay. And I haven't seen, I know they did like Aladdin. Mulan is coming out soon. I do love Mulan, so maybe I'll watch Mulan. Yeah. What do you think, Dan?
So I'm kind of in the same boat as you with most of what you said. I only saw Cinderella, which came out like back in like 2015 or 14, I think,
Oh.
which I think was like where they started with all of their like remaking their movies into live action. And I thought Cinderella was good. I watched Beauty and the Beast, kind of same feelings with you. I was like, meh. It was like same story, cool. Love Emma Watson, so that was cool to see her. But like, I agree. I feel like it's kind of just like almost lazy at this point, and it's just generating revenue that they know that they can get.
Right.
Which I think is just like, we want new things. We don't just want to see the same, or at least personally myself, and it sounds like you as well. But like, I would much rather see like new things coming from Disney. Like I just saw Onward this past week.
Oh,
phenomenal!
Dan, did you cry? Yeah.
I sobbed.
Oh my God, I watched it a few weekends ago. Oh my God.
It was just
it's so good. People who are watching, if you haven't seen Onward yet and you can get somebody's Disney Plus login, go watch it. It's so good.
Yeah. I didn't even get Disney Plus. I rented it.
Oh, good for you. That's great. Right? Yes, do that. Go rent it.
Yeah, if you can rent it, do that. Yeah. I felt, because I was trying to find Disney Plus, but just couldn't get it anywhere. So I did eventually end up renting it. So support any local movies or things that are going on if you can. But it's just like, I'd rather see something new. I'd rather see something like modern aged. But the one thing I am seeing on Twitter with the Hercules things is everyone's talking about the Muses. And that I do agree with. I just want to have like a live action Muse movie, I feel.
Totally.
And people are talking about like different people that might play the Muses.
Yeah.
And I know Amber Riley's being thrown around on Twitter, which I think she would be phenomenal.
Is Lizzo being floated? I feel
Lizzo like is being floated, yes.
Okay, and that's who I thought of right away.
I have actually, fun fact, seen some discordance between Amber Riley fans and Lizzo fans.
Whoa.
Never thought I'd say that. But they were like, Amber Riley's been around for a while. Let her do it. And we were like, but Lizzo's like, now, all this stuff.
Yeah.
I think they'd both be great.
Why not? Throw them both in there. Yeah. We got a few muses to cast.
I meant like one or the other, but having them both as muses with Beyonce. And then like, I've seen Beyonce on there. Is there any like ideal person if you could have in a live action like Disney remake? Is there like one actor or actress or just person that you would like to see in a Disney movie that's a live action remake?
Oh man, great question. This is where I just don't know that many actors and actresses. Like
I have that issue too.
Yeah. There's so many hilarious and really talented women that I think could play the Muses. When I think about like, okay, whose chemistry do I want to see together? Like for that group of, there's 3 of them, right?
I think there's 5 for the Muses.
There's 5?
Because they're the ones on the vases, right?
Yeah. Heck yeah. Okay. I don't know if she can sing, but Nicole Byer is so funny. Like I'd put her in there. Yeah, there's lots of people I'm like, I don't know if you can sing, but you're really funny. Like Phoebe Robinson is great. Do you have an answer to this question? Who you'd want to see?
So as a Muse, I really do think Amber Riley's probably like my top.
She would be great.
Just her, like I remember like hearing her the first few times on Glee when I was like watching it, and I would just be like, oh my freaking God, like her voice is phenomenal. And I feel like I haven't really seen or heard any new things from her recently. I don't follow her, so she might have new things out and I just might not be aware. Yeah. But like I feel like that would kind of just like re-spark kind of for her. And I would love to just like see her take that on, like
that'd be cool.
Runs she could do with that. And I also am, if this ends up happening because it's just rumored, but I would love to see like 5 women like harmonizing and just like just carrying those roles together, because honestly in Hercules those are probably some of my favorite parts, just the songs
they're like sing. The music that the Muses sing is the best part of that movie. Like there's like a few good other songs and funny stuff or whatever, but without like the opening sequence that the Muses sing, Zero to Hero is like potentially the greatest Disney song ever written, in my opinion. There's like what else are we watching this movie for? You know?
Yeah.
Oof.
Mhm.
Okay, now I do want them to make this movie because now I want to see. I'm ready for more muses. I'm ready
See,
for
my
new.
thing is, Kelsey, here's an idea, and Disney, if you're watching this, let me know, and I'll take like small revenue, and you can run with this idea. But if they did like a movie about the muses and like how they got painted on the vase that they're on, or whatever, I don't fucking know. Very bad plot so far. But like an origin story for these
Yeah.
muses, give me that.
Yep, totally.
You know, I'd watch more songs. Ugh,
Mm.
I'd watch that.
Yep. Ugh. Okay, well we've offered some great suggestions to Disney, so
Disney, let us know if you have any questions, comments, or
yeah,
concerns.
we'll wait for our royalties checks any day now.
Okay, Kelsey, I have one last hot topic, and this is
Okay.
one that I kept secret from Kelsey. We usually talk a little bit about what we're going to chat about before, and then not tell each other what we think, and then share here. But sometimes I like to surprise Kelsey with things, and this is one of them.
I don't know what this is.
So the Pentagon, you know, like big government, they
Yeah,
released 3 UFO videos.
like they found UFOs?
They're like from different times in the last like 30 or like 40 years or something. There was one I think from like 2000, like early 2000s. There was one from a little earlier than that, and I think there was one from like 2016 or 2017. And
Whoa.
I watched like a little clip, just like kind of giving me basic info. But like my thing is, if the Pentagon's
Go
gonna be
for
like
it.
releasing this footage about aliens, like give us the other stuff. Like, where are they? Who are they? Where do they come from? Are they nice? Do they talk to us? Like I want to
Wow.
know all this. You know, if they're gonna start like releasing this UFO stuff, I like they must have more.
The timing is really interesting. Like why, if some of these are from years ago, why are we just now releasing them? What about quarantine, COVID-19 pandemic time? Feels like the right time to be releasing footage of UFOs. That's fascinating.
See, my question is like, are they trying to have it fly under the radar? Is that why they're releasing it now? So it's like not really in the news cycle. Do they want us to be
true.
more aware we're all at home on social? Like,
Yeah. I really thought the time of the UFO, we had just passed by it. Like,
it's back.
it was like a thing for a while. I don't even know what decade UFOs were a big fascination for our country. And I thought it was over, but apparently not. So that is so interesting. Well, I'm definitely going to have to go watch these videos. Can you watch the videos? Did you watch them?
I watched like a little clip that had like little bits of all the videos, but I wasn't able to like go in and find all the like the full videos and like full data.
Yeah.
So maybe that's something we'll research and we'll talk more about later. So we're not just like there's UFOs, but like, do you think aliens exist? And then we'll get on to real stuff. Don't worry.
I do. I mean, I'm very open to the idea that there are living things besides the things we have found on Earth, on other planets and other galaxies and other solar systems, etc. Like, to me, it feels like, of course, there must be other living things. And I guess they could be interested in what we're doing. I don't know. I'm sort of like, are human beings really that interesting? Like, is Earth really that interesting? But I guess we as humans do have a fascination with stuff happening on other planets. So, aliens could too. I have a really hard time imagining that they look like, I don't know, like every depiction of an alien that's ever been in like a horror movie or a sci-fi movie or whatever, I'm like, no, that's not what they look like, probably. But I don't know. I can't imagine what they would look like. Wow. That is really interesting. My other question for the Pentagon is how there's so many things. We've got like drones and it's like, how are we so sure that this is I want to go watch the video to see my non-expert eyes watching this video. Like, how are we so sure that it's like an alien as opposed to just some person flying something in their I mean, maybe it's up really, really high or something.
Yeah, I know.
But
one of them was like it was like a hovering craft that was 40 or 50 I'm gonna get the measurements wrong, so that's not important. But it was like hovering above the ocean, and it was like a fighter jet or something that's flying by like a really fast plane, and the UFO was just like floating there. It wasn't moving in any way; it was just hovering. And then once the fighter jet like started approaching or saw it, or it just sped off like super super fast in a different direction.
Yeah.
So like the super fast plane wasn't able to keep up with the UFO. Was what I gathered from that video, at least, in like the little comments underneath. So like I think it was a mix of like not knowing what object is flying, plus also like immense speeds or like capabilities we aren't able to have with our flying objects. I guess, maybe, but like,
wow.
I want to know more. Pentagon, Disney, reach out to us. We have lots of questions today.
We have so many questions and we have some answers. So reach
Only
out.
someday.
Pentagon and Disney.
I'm sure they'll get back to us by next week's
episode. We've covered the whole spectrum of, you know, major U.S. institutions, from the Pentagon to Disney
to pets.
To pets. Good for us. Good job.
The three cornerstones of America.
Oh man. All right, Dan, thanks for finding all those stories for us to talk about this afternoon. And you ready to get into our topic for our episode this week?
I'm super ready.
All right. This week we are talking about stereotypes. Woo! It feels weird to be cheering about that, but that's what we're talking about.
I just had the same thought, Kelsey. I was like, should I woo-hoo? Like, it's not a great thing to woo-hoo about, but like talking about it is fun.
Talking about it is great. Yeah. So Dan, this was your suggested topic for this week, and I'm thrilled that this is what we landed on. Do you want to sort of walk us through? I'm sure anybody who might be watching knows what a stereotype is, but do you want to sort of walk us through what does the word mean? What's a stereotype?
Yeah, of course. So I was doing a little extra research just to make sure that I would be coming from a space where I could at least describe it in a way that I felt like was strong enough and I could answer questions, or kind of just we could have a chat about it. So from what I have seen after doing some research and kind of reading some articles, is stereotypes can really be any overgeneralized belief or set of beliefs that are specific about a certain category or group of people. And I know that's a pretty like broad sense of a definition, but really for me, like stereotypes, it helps lead and builds the foundation for groups being seen as just like a group. Like there's no individual in that group. It really just makes them as like, ooh, you're acting like XYZ, or I view you as XYZ. I am putting you in this one stereotype. That's who you are. So it kind of diminishes that individual's traits and features, because just because they have these certain stereotypes or have aspects of certain stereotypes, that's not who they are. And I feel like that was really like the core of what I wanted to tackle today, like stereotypes, how that can affect us and how that can also affect just social justice as a whole. Yeah,
definitely. It's so relevant today. Yeah, for lots of reasons, which I'm sure we'll get into. But I think you're right. The core of it is just when we don't treat people like individuals, we treat them as part of a group that they may identify with, but often the things we believe about a certain group of people just aren't even true, or they're based in something, you know, some like really problematic idea that somebody came up with, you know, like a racist idea or sexist idea, homophobic idea that somebody like came up with and then started putting on this whole group of people. Yeah. So Dan, you have you took a class in college, it sounds like, where this was a discussion.
Yeah. So strangely enough, this came across in my history of piracy class. Which
piracy, like pirates?
Like boats, pirates, eye patches, parrots.
Who do we have to talk to at Albertus about offering a history of piracy class?
I don't know, but that was the last class I needed for my history minor, so it really worked out for me.
Great.
Super interesting class. I learned so much. But like I remember the first thing we did in the first class when we sat down is the professor like introduced, talked about the syllabus, all that stuff. But then we kind of started diving into like, what do we see as pirates? Like when you think of pirate, what's the first thing you think of, Kelsey? Like, give me anything.
I think of a red bandana on their head. It's a man, and he has like an eye patch and a beard, and he's probably is missing like a hand or a leg. And he's got some jewels, like some gold or something, and he's on a ship. That's
yeah. And that was basically kind of what we all said in our class too, like, ooh, this. Yeah. And like, we kind of listed those things out and a few other things. And then our professor was like, okay, great. How many of these do we think are actually accurate for like the entire group of pirates?
Right.
And then none of us really had any answers. And it was so interesting to me that he kind of led a conversation about stereotypes about pirates in that class. Yeah. And it kind of just started making me think about the way media displays things to us and how we absorb that as children or young adults, or even just adults, and how we internalize that and put that into our brains. But I remember like he would tell us eye patches were so that like at night you could like lift up the eye patch so you could see in the dark, so that one eye was adjusted to dark, or when you were going underneath the ship where it is dark because there's not as many windows or sunlight, you could flip up your eye patch so your eye was already adjusted to the darkness, not because like they lost an eye. And so like he would go into a lot of these different things, and then those like that stereotype of, ooh, pirates have an eye patch because they lost an eye. It's like most pirates who wore an eye patch did have an eye, at least from what I had learned, because they just had that to adjust their light sensitivity. So it was even just that one example, I think, for me, opened up kind of like, oh wow, once we learn about something, we really do hold on to it. And like I feel like that's why stereotypes can be so dangerous, because like you really do internalize that and lock that into your brain. And I know that's like a very basic example of a stereotype, but kind of just like an example of how people can internalize and make things in their head that they think are correct or that they believe to be correct that really aren't. And then also kind of just to make sure everyone kind of has a basis understanding of stereotypes as we move forward too.
Yeah. No, that's a great example. And we certainly, maybe pirates as a group doesn't feel, I mean, there are still pirates in the world in 2020 that I think look very different from the sort of cartoon character image that many of us probably have if we grew up like watching Peter Pan or like the Pirates of the Caribbean movies or whatever. But there's so many other groups of people that we have stereotypes about in the United States, in the world, right? And most stereotypes are negative. And then I think there are some that are sort of neutral. It's like maybe a stereotype about what a certain group of people likes to eat, or like how they dress or something like that. And then there's even stereotypes that are positive, that like, this whole group of people is really good at this one thing, or really good at something, really naturally talented in some way. But I think we can talk about how even stereotypes that are ostensibly like positive can have negative impacts on the people that we make them about, right? And certainly the negative stereotypes are like always harmful. So we were sort of thinking through some different groups of people in the United States that have stereotypes about them. And I think we kind of focused on different groups by race. Certainly you can talk about stereotypes about different genders, different sexualities, different religions, different nationalities, like based on what country you come from, how much money your family, like really any way that people identify, to stereotypes about different kinds of jobs that people have. And oh man, everything. I feel exhausted. One thing that feels really, if we think about negative stereotypes, one that actually feels really relevant. I saw this article recently. So obviously we're all wearing face masks when we go out into the world now, or we should be. And I was reading these articles as the suggestion, and then eventually like the mandate for face masks came out, at least in Connecticut. Lots of Black men specifically were saying I don't feel super comfortable wearing a face mask in public necessarily because of the stereotype that a Black man could be dangerous or could be a criminal or could be looking to hurt someone or something, and that, you know, sort of like a face mask might lend to that image. And that to me is just such a clear example of how harmful stereotypes can be, because because that stereotype exists, that like Black men are criminals, right? Which we know is not true, or, you know, there's people of all different races that do things that are wrong. But that's actually like a real world consequence of that stereotype, is that potentially there are people who feel like they can't protect themselves, like they can't wear a mask, which is good for their health because of how people are going to, what assumptions people are going to make about them. So I think that's like that's one example really specific to the coronavirus and like the time that we're currently living in. But there's always real world consequences to beliefs we have about other kinds of people.
Yeah, Kelsey, and I feel like you brought up a really good point too. I remember when the mask mandates were coming out, because I saw similar articles in Massachusetts as well, where I am right now, and it really put into perspective for me like how privileged I am to be lucky enough that like I didn't have to really think twice when it was like, oh, we have to wear masks. I was like, oh, okay, like, yep, I'll add that to the checklist of whenever I leave the house.
Yeah.
But then I was reading those articles and I was like, wow, I am lucky because I do not have that stereotype against me. And I hate saying that because I feel guilty saying that, but that guilt is something that kind of empowers me to move forward and try and make change and kind of just be better for the world. But it's just one of those situations, like when you come from a point of privilege, sometimes you never really think about stereotypes or how those stereotypes can affect others. Because even just like the clothes people wear, like there are some Black boys or Black men that if they wear hoodies, like with the hood up, like then they also don't feel safe, or that they just don't feel comfortable wearing an article of clothing.
Right.
Because that stereotype has been played throughout the media with our, and it's just, it kind of continues to go on and on. So it's frustrating, but like that's such a good point of kind of just making sure that we're all trying to stay as knowledgeable as possible, especially during a time like this, so that we can support each other.
Yeah. And one other thing I wanted to talk about, so the town that I grew up in Uncasville, Connecticut, which is in the southeastern part of the state. And my high school in particular, there was like we had a lot of people move to our community once Mohegan Sun, the casino, is in Uncasville. So when the casino was like getting really big, it had opened and it was creating lots of jobs, which was really good. Lots and lots of people moved into our community, and there was a real influx of Asian and Asian American families moving into the area that I lived in. And one stereotype that really like sticks out for me, and I think it's interesting to think about because it's a positive thing. Like it's not saying anything degrading about anyone, but there was this stereotype that kids that I went to school with definitely felt that if you're Asian or if you're Asian American, then you are good at math, right? Like that you just automatically, I don't know, you're born to be good at math, or maybe it's because you work really hard and you're good at math, but like that was the belief, right? That just because of your race, like this is something that's true about you. And that might not sound like that big of a deal because, oh, well, it's like a compliment if you're good at math. But it makes me think like, obviously there are people from the Asian American community who are not good at math because, again, like nothing is true about every single person in a certain group. And so if I was a person who was Asian and I wasn't good at math, like would I feel potentially really bad about myself or feel like I don't belong to this group that I know I'm a part of because this thing that everybody says about this group just isn't true about me. So I think we want to be careful even when we're saying things that sound like a compliment or it sounds like a positive stereotype, that there still could be negative consequences because of that, because we just can't generalize about whole groups of people that way. You know, we can't make assumptions about individuals just because of, you know, their membership in a certain group.
Yeah. And Kelsey, what you just said too made me think back to our first episode about identity
Mm-hmm.
and how these stereotypes can even cause rifts in how people identify with themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, if there was an Asian American person who was not good at math, they might start to feel like they don't connect as well with their Asian heritage, or that they are Asian American
Yeah.
because this one stereotype does not apply to them. And
Yep.
that's not true at all, because if they are an Asian American, they have descendants from certain places, and that's what ties them to their identity. And just growing up culturally and being culturally aware of that identity. But I feel like stereotypes are so dangerous too for the internal self, because you can really start having a lot of battles with yourself, just like, ooh, I am not like this, so I don't fit into X community, or
Right.
I'm not XYZ because of these stereotypes. And I feel like that's
Yeah.
sad, because it creates bars and barriers for groups that already have so much to deal with.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Ooh. So
And-
this other. Go ahead.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say, and when you were talking about your high school too, it made me think about my high school in the hometown that I am in right now, Tewksbury. Our mascot is the Redman, and I know that is something that I have always, not always, because when I was younger, I wasn't really too aware of how offensive that can actually be to
Yeah.
Indigenous people. But growing up, going to college, kind of learning about that, I remember when I was a freshman or sophomore in college, there was a big movement in the town for us to try and change our mascot name by certain people. And I cannot tell you how many posts and statuses, and just like there was a whole town hall meeting where everyone was wearing like their Tewksbury fill in the blank gear, and it just has like the Indian face with like the head, and it's just like very stereotypical.
Yeah.
And that's just something, like, I grew up in that for so long, but I was so used to it. But like, it's such a big problem. And
Yeah.
it's not just in Mass, it's like all over.
No, my high school is actually the same way. Where I grew up, I went to Montville High School, and their mascot is just the Indians. It's where we were the Montville Indians. Yeah, and there was they did change. I don't know when this happened. They did change the mascot, like the depiction of the mascot. I don't know that there was ever a person that dressed this way. Maybe there was at some point. Like, I could ask my parents. My parents both went to that high school, so, but I never saw, when I was there, like a person dressed up in like a, stereotypical like Native American clothing or anything. But there was sort of like a cartoon version of the mascot that I would say was very stereotypical what he was wearing. And they did get rid of that. But so now the symbol is kind of just like a big M, like there's not like a person associated with it anymore. But there is like a feather hanging off of the M that I think is supposed to be like a throwback to the Native American mascot. And it's been really interesting because, again, like in the last few years, other school districts in the area that have similar mascots, there's been this ongoing conversation of, is this okay? Is it not? And my high school is in an area where there are some tribes and some Native folks, like different groups, different tribes, that they have had conversations with about, like, is it okay that we have this mascot? Because most of the people that go to Montville High School are not Indigenous people, don't have Indigenous heritage. Like, it's mostly white kids. But I remember my high school at some point, they were like, oh no, we've talked to the tribes and they said it's fine. And now a few years now, there was just recently an article in the paper where they were like, oh, we talked to the tribes and they want us to change it. And I was like, they probably wanted you to change it years ago, but now more schools are having these conversations. So I think hopefully it's catching on that we need to be changing our problematic mascots.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I know that's been a big thing in the NFL too.
Yeah.
And just other, tons of other, like, local sports teams, national sports teams. It is a big thing. Yeah. We would love to hear for folks who might be watching this at some point. Like, let us know if this was your experience at the high school that you went to, or maybe there's a sports team you really love that has a not so great mascot.
Yeah. I would also love to hear if anyone's town did go through that change, kind of like how that went. because I was very interested to see like how my town would react like in the following like months and years, and like if that would change like anything like that. So it is a very interesting topic to me. So if anyone is knowledgeable or has any info, drop that in the comments, shoot us an email. We'd love to learn more.
We would, yeah. I want to show our audience this other, since we're talking about stereotypes. Let me make sure we're all going to be able to see this. There's this cool, well, calling it cool sounds sort of weird, but this tool, or this sort of visual that we can look at. This is called the Pyramid of Hate. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is something that I don't know when I first saw this, if I was in college, maybe I was even in high school. I think when you learn about the Holocaust, like this is sometimes a tool that gets used just to talk about, you know, when we think about like, how did that happen? How did we get to a point of like such violence and such horrendous things happening? This pyramid of hate is something that people sometimes refer to. So this is designed to show that like, at the very top, sort of the worst thing that could ever happen is genocide. And that is sort of a smaller part of the pyramid, because that's not the most common thing. That's not, you know, what is happening in like all communities everywhere all the time. But if you go down the pyramid and you look at each of these different categories, sort of the thing that's happening gets bigger and bigger, and it gets a little bit less intense. So that if then we look at the bottom, the foundation of this pyramid is just bias. And there's all these different things that fit into that, including stereotyping. Other things that are in here is justifying your bias by seeking out like-minded people. So if I think a messed up thing about a certain group of people, and maybe somebody tells me that I shouldn't think that, or I shouldn't treat someone that way, maybe I go find other people that have the same opinion as me to be like, no, we have the same opinion. This is okay, right? I don't have to change my behavior. I don't have to change my beliefs. Making like jokes about different groups of people, or just insensitive remarks, all of that falls into bias. So none of that is obviously as violent as something like genocide or some of the other types of violence that are listed in this other category up here. But the point of this pyramid is to show like, when there's lots of acts of bias happening and we just are okay with it, or we live in a culture where these sorts of things are fine to do, or we let people get away with them or whatever, then we're enabling the stuff that comes on top of it, right? So after bias, the next thing is individual acts of prejudice. So this is where like somebody does something messed up to a person because of some part of their identity. It doesn't reach the level of like, I'm doing something that's harming this entire group, but from a one-to-one basis, like I'm doing something harmful. And then discrimination, and then bias motivated violence, or like hate crimes, and then genocide. So yeah, Dan, I know when I showed you this earlier, you said that this wasn't something that you had seen before. So do you have any like reaction to this image here?
Yeah, I feel like this is really powerful, because not only do most people know like how a pyramid is, like you build from the bottom and build up to that like point at the top. I think it really shows how stereotyping does really build that foundation of hate here. And I love learning new things about social justice and like seeing these new graphs or symbols or just like kind of infographics, because they really, to me, help like organize it in my head. And this really showed me how strong stereotyping can be in hate and just making the world like not as good of a place as it can be. Because you might not think stereotypes are as harmful as they actually are, or that they can't really do much harm in general. But like we said, stereotyping is only the beginning. It's building that foundation. From there, like Elsie said, you can find those like-minded people and start acting out in ways that you might not, all because you think a certain thing about someone that might not even be true, or a group of people. And it was also kind of scary to me realistically when I saw it, that it's some of those smaller things, like making those jokes or those like basic stereotypes, even those positive ones that you talked about earlier, Kelsey, Any of those can be led here to create a foundation of hate.
Right.
And for me, I don't think I ever really thought about it like that until I saw this picture, that it's the littlest things, even if you're like, oh, it was just one time I saw this one thing, it doesn't matter. Like, it does matter, because every time you do something, you're laying down one more brick to build this pyramid.
Right.
And the more you build, the higher you're going to get. And we do not want anything
Right.
on this pyramid, but obviously the higher you get, the worse it gets.
Yeah. And I don't mean to suggest that, you know, I think we all have bias in us, and we just do have stereotypes about people. I mean, some of us have really good control over if we express those things out loud, or if those things affect our actions. But the reality is, like, we grow up in a world where we are socialized to believe things about certain groups of people, right? Even if you just think about gender, and particularly like the gender binary of men and women, like, we grow up in a world where we are taught certain things, that like men are like this and women are like this, or boys are like this and girls are like this. And you have to unlearn them, right? I mean, unless you have the most like radical parents in the world, but even then, you know, we go to school, we hang out with our friends, we go to other people's houses, like we watch TV. There's no way we're getting away from all these different stereotypes that exist in the world. So you have to unlearn them, and really be checking yourself, like, oh, if I'm having this reaction to this particular person, or I made this assumption about this group of people, like, oh, I have to notice that about myself, that I did that, and then figure out how I'm gonna not do that next time. And because I don't mean to suggest that, you know, because we have bias, that means that we one day go on to do something violent towards a particular group of people. Like, most people are not going to do that. But I think another point of this pyramid is, like, we wouldn't have genocide if we didn't first have bias and stereotypes and like smaller acts of prejudice, right? Or if we didn't have discrimination, then we would never get to those horrific things that have happened in our history and will continue to happen. Like, they wouldn't if the bottom stuff on the pyramid didn't exist. So I think that's where it falls on each of us as individuals to be noticing the things we think we've been taught about different groups of people, or noticing the thoughts we have about different groups of people, and really pushing ourselves to like look for different examples, look for ways to be reminded that not everybody in a certain group is the same. Yeah. I don't know if you have any other thoughts about that, like other ways that we can be challenging our own stereotypes about people or groups of people.
Yeah, I think one way, and you kind of touched upon this a little bit, is kind of just self-education.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, just because someone has a bias doesn't automatically make them an evil person, or mean that they're going to start like working up this pyramid in any way. We all do have them. But I have found, for me personally, whenever I have a bias and I am noticing that bias, I always try and take a step back to be like, why am I thinking about this?
Mm-hmm.
And then if it's because like I don't have enough information, or if that's because that's something I'd always thought was correct, I try and go like actually check it and see if there's like any factual
Mm-hmm.
resource, or just like try and learn more about that certain group, stereotype, cultures, and kind of just educate myself first.
Yeah.
So that then from there I can make that next step of whether that's like, ooh, I did have a bias, I should really start working on that, or any other path. Usually it is me learning that I do have a bias, because like you said, it's common. That's kind of the way that the world is. But I think it's really powerful when you can understand that you have a bias and then work through that to break that, so that you can be a more supportive and like positive human to other groups.
Yeah. I like that you focused on self-education, because I think another thing that people, particularly people in privileged groups, or, you know, people that are in sort of like the dominant culture groups, so white people, men, cisgender people, straight people, Christian, like whatever group you want to talk about, we sometimes put it on, if I have a stereotype about a certain group of people, I might actually rely on that group of people to teach me why I'm wrong. Which just isn't, that's not okay. That's not fair.
It's a big ask.
It's a big ask. I mean, I don't know if this has happened to you, Dan. You know, you and I are both part of the LGBTQ community, and sometimes you just don't want to have to be the person to teach a person why the thing they just said is homophobic. Like, is that really my job to explain that to you? You're not paying me to do it, right? So, and sometimes I do have the patience to to answer people's questions, or to, you know, try to explain to them why that thing they just said is messed up. But I think self-education as much as possible. That means, and that doesn't mean like, you know, go in your own bubble and just think in your own head. That means like, if I want to learn more, for example, about Asian American people, let me go find some books written by an Asian American person about their experience, or, you know, fiction about this type of family. And let me, like, you know, I think we need to be seeking out media and sources that are written by the people of a particular group. And then just, yeah, doing some thinking on it, and educating ourselves.
Absolutely.
Whew, damn, this has been a doozy of a conversation here.
I know. I feel like we always start these and then we just like dive right in. And then I look at the time and I'm like, oh, we've talked about that for a while.
Yeah. I'm thinking I was going to say, I think our, you know, for our last segment, how we always talk about music that we have been listening to. I'm like, what is some music I can listen to that's gonna, this feels really intense. So I'm trying to think about a song or an album to suggest that might, if anybody has watched this, like, you know, be a little uplifting after this heavy topic. Heavy but important.
Yes. Yes. A nice decompress moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do, on the subject of music that is bringing us life this week, I do have my answer to that. I don't know if you're ready, Dan.
I ever since that one time I didn't have one answer ready, I'm always going to have an answer ready.
You got it. All right.
But I have it open in a separate window, so I know the title and the artist.
Oh, so good for you. That's, yeah. See, I failed to, like, I don't do that much preparation. So I really love, you know, you mentioned the movie Onward earlier. And the final song that plays in the movie Onward, it plays over the credits, is by this artist, Brandi Carlile, who I really love. And honestly, she could be my answer to this question of like, what am I listening to? Because I am always listening to her music. So Brandi Carlile, if you haven't checked her out, go for it. But specifically, she recently formed a group of, it's 4 women. She's one of them, Maren Morris, who lots of people probably know. You know, she's more of like a pop. She's a little bit of country music, but kind of like a pop star. This woman, Amanda Pearl Shires, who is more country, and this woman, Natalie Hemby, who is also more country, but actually was more of a like a writer for people. She like wrote music for other famous people. The 4 of them have formed this group called the High Women. High, like H-I-G-H. And they only have one album that came out, I think last year, maybe the year before. And I've been listening to, they have this great song called Crowded Table that is all about wanting to have a home where like everybody is welcome. And, you know, everybody comes in and like sits down and has dinner together. And there's enough to go around and everybody's invited. So that's what I was listening to earlier today, and I'm going to listen to when we're done recording this. What about you?
So, little story that accompanies mine is in high school, I had a best friend who I always said I was music deprived because I would listen to like a lot of different music. Mm-hmm. So I was cleaning my house and like just going through all my stuff, and I found a whole case of CDs that she used to make me. It like
what a gem.
No, I know. Great best friend. Secondly, it like warmed my heart because I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot that I had this, and it had been years since I seen it. So I went out to my car and I like uploaded 6 CDs because I have a 6 CD like car holder. Ooh. And one of them I totally forgot about, Mariana's Trench, which was a band that I like got into from this friend. And I've been listening to that CD a lot. So Ever After by Mariana's Trench is my song this week.
Cool.
It's a little longer. It's like 4.5 minutes, but it like is a little soft, and then it gets like really powerful. And I'm, as people can probably tell if you are tracking the music that I listen to on a week-to-week basis, it's not always like the happiest, but like I'm happy. So
yeah.
Don't worry. but it's just like they're the songs that make me like feel things. And this song not only like vehemently brought me back to like being like a senior in high school and like listening to the CD with like all my friends in like a car, but it also just like brought back a little bit of that nostalgia along with like the feelings I had from the song. So that was just like a really like surreal moment for me this week. So not only is that like cool, that's also my song because I've listened to it like at least 6 times this week. So
Cool. All right, I'm gonna check that out. I've never listened to that band.
yeah, my friends got me into it, and then I went to a concert that summer, and then I just like totally forgot about them again.
All right.
But they're back. I saw it on Spotify. They released an album in 2019, so I have some new music.
There you go. New stuff. Cool. Well, Dan, thanks for chatting with me about stereotypes this week.
Of course. Thank you, Kelsey. I always enjoy our conversations, and I hope everyone watching does as well.
Yeah, we'll see you guys next week. We don't know what our topic is yet, but we'll have something interesting probably. And let us know if you have any topic suggestions. Feel free to email me or Dan.
Yeah, you can always feel free to let us know if there's any things you want us to address, talk about, even like a hot topic, like things like that. We'd love to have feedback from y'all. So just keep us posted on what you want to hear.
Cool. All right. Bye, everybody.
See ya.